Hi, John Valvano here, and in this video we're going to look at the client-server paradigm. Okay, so we're going to look at openweathermap.org, but it's the same with the Blink server. Okay, so in this context, the server is openweathermap.org, and the client will be our embedded system, our alarm clock. Okay, and so to begin things, the server has to start, and it will create what's called a connection socket. Okay, now a socket is a software structure through which communication can occur. Okay, now when a server is launched, it creates this connection socket on port 80 because it's HTTP, and anybody on the internet can send a packet, a request for connection, through a connection socket. Okay, so again, this is the server saying, hey, I'm a server, come play with me. All right, and what it's going to do is wait for clients to attach to this connection socket. Okay? And now our alarm clock, or our whatever, our embedded system, is the client. Okay, and when it launches, in this particular case, I'm going to search for the internet. I search for the weather. Okay. There may be 1, 2, or 1,000 or 1,000,000 clients all wanting to know the weather. So we're just going to look at two, A and B. So when client A runs, it's going to create what's called a client socket. Okay. Now again, a socket is a software structure through which communication can occur. This is going to be TCP packets. Okay, and so there will be a unique local client socket in each client that it will use to connect to the server. Okay, and when it does, this is the step in which the client will say, I want to know what is the weather I want to connect to openweathermap.org. So it doesn't say I want to know the weather yet. It just says I would like to connect to openweathermap.org. You remember TCP is connection, has a connection. So it's in this context that this client socket is opened and a request goes to the server to say, I would like to connect to you. Okay. And at some time later, another client may be doing the same thing. Okay, and when a server sees a connection request, it will actually create a unique thread for each of the clients, okay, and can create what's called a server socket. Okay, now for every client attaching to this server, there's a separate server socket, server thread to deal with it, and a separate server socket. So like I said, TCP is connected. This client socket is attached to that client socket, and no other sockets on the internet have that such connection. So this is a unique connection between the server and my client. And when B gets its client request, it'll create a separate thread. You'll see it. Okay. And now, let's see. So now B is also wanting to connect to the server, okay, through its client socket. And so the server will now create a second thread and a second server socket. So again, this client socket is connected to that server socket. Now, client A wants to know what the weather is. So it's going to do a get request. And you'll see this in Blink as well. When we want to do something in Blink, we will send TCP packets to the Blink server. Okay. In this case, the request is what's the weather in Austin? Okay, okay, it's cold out there as it turns out. All right, and so that will be a request that will go through this connected socket system, and then once that request is here, over here you can see B wants to know what the weather is too. Okay, and it will process that request, look up the weather in Austin. Okay. And then send back the response. So with TCP, with a get and with a post request, there's always a response. So again, it's a handshake operation. Okay, this is TCP. And so again, client B wants to know what its weather is, and then client A is getting its response, which is a TCP response back here. So every time you send a GET response, a GET TCP packet, you're going to get a TCP response. Okay, that's sunny and 20 degrees. Okay, so it's going to go back, and it turns out it's and then once that response gets back to client A, okay, again, the red is the TCP packet, then this packet here is then this response is processed, and then it will close this socket. Okay, so with TCP, we create a client socket, we use it to connect to the server. It will give us a server socket, and therefore we will send one GET or POST request, and then close the socket down. If we want to know the weather again, we'll just open another socket. Okay, and so here's the response coming back to B, and once this socket is closed, okay, that socket is gone, this connection notices it's no longer connected, and it will close as well, and then this thread is no longer needed, and so it will close the entire thread. Okay, so again, the response goes back to B. So in summary, socket programming is we create a socket, we use it to connect, we send a GET, we get a response, and we close the socket. Okay, and that's the essence of client-server paradigm.